Welcome. All right. Hello everybody. Welcome to Rendezvous. Nice to meet you for the first time / meet up with you or meet you for the second time onwards. So today we're talking about numbers. So the sun's shining in with shocking vivacity, given that it's Ireland. So I feel like an auspicious energy is going to grace me with the ability to think the theme through properly. Maybe. So basically, just going to talk a little bit about names and numbers and how, the kind of deeper level to it, maybe a bit deeper than you might normally think about. Like, oh, it's just a name. What's the big deal? So let's say, starting with names, I guess. We have like, okay, my name's Jamie. My brother's name's Mark, my twin brother. And there's, we were potentially swapped by accident in the bathtub when we were like babies, because one Mark had paint or nail polish on one nail, like his thumb or something. So our mum could distinguish us because we looked like almost exactly the same. And then in the bath, it like rubbed off and she couldn't tell who was who. And then she was basically like, I'm pretty sure that's Jamie and that's Mark. I don't know exactly how. I imagine probably mother's instincts, intuition, she probably knew. And so probably I was born Jamie. But it's entirely possible, in the words of Joe Rogan, it's entirely possible that I was Mark for like a while and then started being called Jamie, all of which is before I could talk, so I wouldn't know. But then, so did that have an impact on me? Like, Jamie, is there anything in that name, or is it just like, oh, it doesn't matter? It's just you are who you are. You've got your genetics, you've got your upbringing, your culture, your family. Things are, there's no difference. But if you think about it, as in terms of pure sound, Mark, Jamie, are they the same or different? Different, right? And if you investigate it closely, there's a bit of a difference in feeling. Like Mark, it's kind of like a stronger, sound. Mark, to the point. Jamie, I don't know. Jamie, it's like a different, a up down kind of thing. And so in terms of just pure sound, it seems different. And so it seems to me probably that's going to have different emotional connotations beneath the surface to some extent. Like if someone's name's Cor Krechtenbold, hey, this is my little baby, Cor Krechtenbold. Oh, okay. Some sounds just have a certain feeling. So, oh, this is my baby. Alaluba. Okay, which baby do you trust more, Alaluba or Korsten Krechtenbold? Or like Omnia, the little baby Omnia. It's like Omnia. It kind of sounds like the feeling of that sound is, even when you're vocalizing, it's like Omnia. It's kind of like a smooth transition through facial movements. Whereas Krechtenbold, it's like disruptive. So there's that's one thing. But then also, like, say you get it, the linguistic element, like Mark has the double meaning of like a mark, a target, like, to hit the mark or to miss the mark, right? A marksman, or in catching in football, like to mark something. you catch it, you know, or to mark, to be marked, like, you know, um, a a blemish or an effect to be marked by something. So there's all these connotations which come with that as well, or mark, like that was a currency, right? The Deutsch, wasn't it? Yeah, the German mark, yeah, the Deutschmark, I think. And so, you know, whereas Jamie doesn't have these connotations, um, it has me in it. So I don't know. But anyway, and these are just two names, right? But like it applies for any name. Um, where it's interesting, I think basically when parents name a child, it's a very powerful, magical, mysterious thing because you're trying to see, you might see like, okay, look at the baby and go, what name feels good? What name do I like? But then within the field of names that I like, which name calls out to me? It's like sharing some sort of energy with this child. And and then or you could even say like apparently my parents, I think they said they wanted just strong names. And I think they did that very well. But like, oh, strong name. But you know, but it's interesting, like, okay, what does that even mean? But then also like the idea of having names for your children where you want them to carry the certain energy. And it almost seems to me, given that if you look into spirituality, it seems that in a way your name is the primal thought around which all other thoughts orbit in this false illusory self, the ego, the voice in your head, your self-image, the me, which um, would say, no, I'm not the same as the universe, because actually you are the universe. But to be candid, but in the sense that you're not the same as the universe, that is the ego. And you can say, look, I am the universe and I'm not. Okay, fair enough. Then that's more balanced ego. Like, you know, you're aware that you're you're the branch and you're the tree. Okay, that's true. But if you're like, no, I'm not the tree, I'm just a branch. Here I am. I'm independent of the tree. I'm not the tree. Okay, you're insane. And that's people who think, you know, I'm in the universe. I am not the universe. I'm just in it. Like you don't understand how it works. Which is going to cause you a lot of problems. And eventually you're going to have to wake up to the reality that, hey, you're part of the tree, you know, it's a beautiful thing. But so the idea of this primordial or basic root of ego, seemingly one or maybe close to the root, I don't know, is like the me thought, the thought of I, of me, like here I am, Jamie, or you know, say to someone, hey, you know, you're Adam. That's your name. Adam, can you say Adam? Your name, Adam? And the baby's like, they keep saying this Adam noise and looking at me. I think Adam means me, whatever. Like that starts to form. And then around that, you go, okay, well, what does Adam want? What does Adam do? What should Adam do? Um, and that can, you know, develop. And so you're kind of pairing when you're choosing a name. It seems to me you're gifting the consciousness, the soul that has come into your family um, from mysterious regions unknown or forgotten. Um, uh, you're giving this incoming soul an energy. You're pairing it with an energy in the form of the name you choose. And it seems to me that that can kind of like multiplication, you know, 2 times 3 is 6. That say 2, let's say that represents the soul for some reason. And then 3 is one particular name you could give them. Or you could give them another name. Let's use the number 5 to represent that name. Then you're going to get a different multiplication and you're going to have a different end result. In one case, the child goes around as a 6, the other as a 10, you know, and that in both of them, there is still the soul represented here, bizarrely, by the number 2. But, and it's the same soul is inside there. And yet, in the terms of human experience, you have different manifestation. So, and, you know, you could argue that that's what happens through lifetimes. If it is indeed the case that we are reincarnated, then that there's the same soul, but interacting with different bodies and also different families and all that, but also different names. and the energy which is granted to you as, okay, I'm going to call you, for example, my parents, calling me Jamie or Mark. And so, and who knows exactly what these names signify, but I think it's interesting that that's kind of like the purest or the original, one of the primary and original acts of control or loving conditioning from the parents. And so the parents are conditioning the child, hopefully with positive intentions, in order to help the child manifest and express freedom. You need to limit the boundaries to some extent and set a structure which the child can grow into, in order to then, once that's, you know, integrated, then you'll be able to interact with people and play the games, and then with increasing freedom and skill. But if you're like, oh, do whatever you want, baby, I don't want to control you, so I'm just not even going to tell you how to talk or anything, or tell you when something's wrong, then you're going to have someone who's totally dysfunctional, unable to interact in society, going to have a bunch of negative feedback from everyone around them, and then they're not going to be able to express any freedom at all. So ironically, you need to kind of condition and restrict freedom in a way, restrict opportunities. You need to choose a name, give them one name. And they have no say in the matter. It's like funny, like as someone said, like the thing, your name is almost, in that one sense, it's that which is most personal to us, and yet it's chosen by someone else. Um, so you've, so that's interesting, but you need to give them that. And that's, I guess, kind of in a way a metaphor and like a primary example of what the parenting role is. But anyway, and then people change the name. Some people, oh, I don't really resonate with that name. I want to change my name to this. And it's kind of a magical act, that kind of casting a spell, and saying, this is the energy I want to rally around and kind of orbit, and uses inspiration, motivation to orient myself with the kind of feeling that I want to bring into my life. And you see that when people, basically wake up from the dream of separate individual existence and become quote unquote enlightened or whatever, or awakened, spiritually realized, which is a real thing. And when it's quite common for people to change their name, and in a way they're kind of recognizing the death of that false self. Their soul had been believing, the number 2 had been believing it was the number 10, let's say. And then it's realized, oh, there's this conditioning, number 5, and I'm just my soul's been interacting with that and interfacing, and actually I'm not that. So it's beautiful. 10's beautiful, 5's beautiful, 2's beautiful, but I see now that I am the 2. I am the soul. I'm not that which I've been conditioned through and interacting with in order to experience this life. And I'm at a level of spiritual maturity where and I have a kind of integrated, holistic, and expansive enough perspective that I can operate based living as a 2 in the world. So that here's 5, but I'm operating as number 2. I just, because I don't let my conditioning control me. Something like that, and anyway, they will, change the names often. Like, so, Richard Albert becomes Ram Dass, or, Eckhart Tolle taking the name Eckhart from Meister Eckhart. Past life Eckhart. Interesting. Let's have a sip of coffee. Yeah. And so, or, like musicians, Bob Dylan, Robert Zimmerman becoming Bob Dylan, or, Bono, that kind of thing. And then, Sting. And so, and all these, it's kind of like creating a character, a new self to scaffold yourself onto and experience and integrate, so it can become second nature. But in a way, it can also be like kind of like a discovery and an unveiling and a excavation of something, an energy which is closer to your innate natural energy. And so in a way, a name can be bringing you home. And I guess maybe nicknames can do that in a way if they're right. But yeah, and then nicknames also, it's kind of like, you have another name, and then something you can play around with and kind of invest with energy to kind of modulate and modify your energy, and become more balanced maybe, or just enjoy life more, explore more. So, and then your family names, that's even less in your control. It's even out of your parents' control, really, um, more or less. And that's interesting. Like, my family name's a little bit unusual. But like, say when I look at it, I don't see like, oh, son of sticky stuff, There's like a feeling to it or an image, and that it's a bit weird. It's kind of become like a good thing. It's kind of like maybe that makes me more comfortable to be weird and not feel bad about it than if my name was Smith, I'd be like, no, I feel like, oh, that agent from the Matrix, he gets a bad rap. He's all right. Something about him. I don't know what it is, but he seems okay. Maybe these, even your family name, kind of can affect the way you perceive things, perhaps. And then middle names, and also say, like James, my name's technically James on my birth certificate. And for a while, I left Australia and I wanted to experiment with I felt like I was a bit stuck in a rut in some ways, with my mind and my personality, and I wanted to kind of expand and kind of heal. Um, and so I went by James for a while. Also, I was going to like a French-speaking country. I'll call Quebec a country. They'd like that probably. Um, and uh, and basically, I was like, oh well, maybe James would be easier than Jamie for them. You don't want whatever. Anyway, and so people knew me as that for a while, and then I felt like that kind of allowed me to be spontaneous and create myself and not feel hemmed in by expectations of, oh no, but this is who you are, even for myself. And then ironically, it's just a different sound, but I think it allowed my soul to kind of disentangle a little bit. And then eventually I went, actually, no, but Jamie, that's closer to home. I want to use that name. And so I kind of returned to that more. And people have been calling me both throughout my life. Every now and then some friends call me James anyway. But I like both. And then that's kind of different angles of yourself or something. So if you don't have a nickname, go on, do some homework. I say give yourself a nickname or an alter ego or something, and kind of invest it with a certain energy and go and experiment with that. And even if it's just to yourself, call yourself that. Or sometimes say like, yeah, like Seamus, this is Jamie or James in Irish. Sometimes I'll use that to myself, just thinking Seamus and go, interesting. That's not really me, but it kind of is. And it could be interesting, and allows you kind of space to play around with. So you are who you are, but then on the level of human, like the body and the mind, there's a lot of room for kind of building and creating yourself and patterns and perspectives and habits, which are, new. And so I think names are an interesting way to do that. And then also you have that for businesses, for countries, um, and you know, like even like countries like the UK, the USA. It's kind of like, ooh, these rather modern countries, so to speak, and they've got these kind of like, yeah, I live in a country which isn't made of words, it's made of letters, Try to explain that to someone like 1,000 years ago. Where are you from? PDR. Excuse me? I'm from the PDR. It, how do you spell PDR? Like, the UK, like you're from the letter U and K. All right, this guy's on drugs, you know. Um, anyway, but so yeah, and then naming things also when you have a phenomenon, it's to understand it and interact with it and be able to analyze it and be able to orient ourselves in a healthy way, like wisely towards it. Often you have to name it first. So, virtue signaling. There are all these people who are saying things and kind of echoing these slogans that these ideologies and ideologues are kind of, trying to spread rather aggressively through the world. And someone, doing something or saying something clearly with the intention of trying to get social brownie points and try and make themselves look good and show, hey, look, I'm part of the good team. Um, so, calling that virtue signaling, that kind of came about, a few years back, no more than 10, maybe 5 years, 10 years ago. It's kind of like, as far as I'm aware, it's kind of more or less a new term. And that is, increasingly happening as a lot of processes are escalating and quite entertaining, if sometimes terrifying, and other times awe-inspiring developments of history. Um, it's becoming necessary to name things, new phenomena that arise up, or aspects of old phenomena which need to be singled out in order to relate and position ourselves to them well. So yeah, naming, or like, even if you're meditating, you can say, just name something as, past, future, fantasy. If you're meditating, you're trying to focus on the present moment, and then a thought comes up like, I could have done it better. Why did I do that? I did that thing with that person, and should I have done it? And I'm thinking, wait a minute. You can just go past and then back to the breath. And it's just a way of saying the mind went to the past. And then next it's like, what would I do if, oh yeah, imagine like, yeah, I had this big library and I had this money and I had this plane of a fantasy, or imagination, or dream, whatever you want to call it. It's kind of no time, hypothetical time. And then, next you're back to the breath, and then soon it's like, dinner. What should I have for dinner? Good. Oh, and then you catch yourself, future, right? And so you might just be sitting there and there's mental silence. And then there's all this kind of, even though you've made the decision that you want to have mental silence and that this would be beneficial for you to connect to the calm space, and just refresh your cognitive vision, nonetheless, the mind is being stubborn and just continuing to chat. So blah, blah, blah. You got silence and you got all this noise, mind continuing to ramble. And throughout it, you just have past, future, past, imagination, past, future, imagination, future, past, dotted throughout it. And you're basically labeling or naming what's going on. And you're kind of, much like a conclusion or an introduction summarizes the essay, condenses it down, to the most primary information. That's what you're doing to your thoughts. And so you're kind of taking a step away from them and taking a step into the holistic consciousness of just silence, and just go past, future, and like that's enough. And so you're using thought, but by naming it, you're kind of engaging with that kind of energy to some extent, but just a little bit. And you're allowing yourself to kind of push away. You're like martial arts. You're using your opponent's energy against them. So you're kind of using the energy of thought. So you're interacting with it a little bit, but kind of by doing that, you're helping yourself become aware. Oh yeah, I'm getting stuck in my mind again. And so the after effect of that thought, past, future, imagination, is that you're going to be able to access the now more, which is the whole point. Anyway, that's another thing about naming. So an interesting name is coffee. Coffee, not only does it sound cool, it also tastes a little bit like this. Unnameable. It's like that thing, they say about honey. Could apply for coffee too. Sure. You can know everything there is to know about coffee. You can write PhDs about coffee and read 100 books. But if you haven't tasted coffee, then you don't know coffee. So names are ultimately not the deep reality. Reality itself is what it is. Here it is in the present moment, the only moment we ever have, actually. Only moment you've ever lived in and ever will live in, are living in right now. Things change, but that's all within the same moment. It's just transformations. It's like you have one room and you move the furniture around, and take photographs of it. You could say, oh yeah, it's different rooms. It's like, well, you're just moving. It's one room. You're just moving all the objects. It's a bit like time, I think. Anyway, but so names are necessary and very useful for thinking and being able to, modify our behavior. Like the skill, one of the main powers humans have. But also, They can be a trap where you are not able to actually be here in the sacred, unspeakable presence of what is. And then here I am throwing all these words around, and these names for actions, verbs, names for things, nouns, names for describing words for both of them, adverbs and adjectives, etc. And to express meaning and logos, consciousness, apprehending order, I guess, and creating order. But ultimately, it's just a bunch of blah, blah, blah. If someone's only speaks Portuguese and they hear this, they're like, don't know, whatever, no idea what he's saying. It's just a bunch of noise. And so ultimately, that is what's going on. But there is this code which you can understand if you have the right internal dictionary. But yeah, so names beneath all of this, it's just here we are, So that's a bit about names. And yeah, it's interesting, like some names like, Vladimir, right? Sounds very strong. It's like or the word like valiant, it's like a wedge. Even the symbol for it is a wedge, and it's a very the pressure is focused on one part of your mouth very intensely, and then it explodes forwards. And so it's very similar. It's interesting that onomatopoeia is kind of a way where even the physicality of your face is reflecting it's like an isomorphism, like a similarity of structure, a mirroring of structure to some extent between the phenomenon described and then the words used. And so, or, beautiful, very, perhaps you could even just analyze that word and analyze it maybe in let's say 7 different languages. And you might find that there's something about the actual concept and nature of beauty itself revealed by that analysis, and that unconsciously the words we use for things reflects the nature of the things. Like beautiful, it's soft, but there's constriction and tension at points. Beautiful, full, it's open. The beau bit, it's like a blooming beau, like opening up like a flower, beau, or opening up like an experience or a sense of revelation or expansion of the mind, So yeah, I think it's all very interesting altogether. Anyway, so swiveling over to numbers, I chose 7 in that example for the 7 languages to analyze the word beauty from, if anyone's got the interest. And but then that would be because 7's like my favorite number. I like 7. And I guess that kind of came about when I realized, like in Harry Potter, they say, oh, 7's the most magically powerful number. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. And I kind of reflected, oh, yeah, like 7 dwarves, 7 seas, 7 wonders of the world, 7 colors in the rainbow, so to speak. Roy G. Biv, whatever. 7 stars, or I think there's 7 rings in Minas Tirith in Lord of the Rings. 7 stars on the banners of the Dunedain, like Aragorn, the Rangers from the north. And 7 this, 7 that, it's all over the place. The 7 wise men, 7 sages who would like, in all these stories that Graham Hancock kind of very insightfully discusses, all these stories from around the world talking about, cataclysm and then a civilizational reset where 7 sages, wise people, went around teaching everyone all the basic skills needed for civilization. But there's all kinds of stuff like this. And so, so I thought, oh, that's really interesting and cool. And then I started thinking about the number 7 itself, and like, okay, like 4, like a square, and then a triangle. It's like a square and a triangle. They're like these the triangle is the most basic kind of smallest in a way, lowest number of sides of any polygon, right? Because a circle only has one side. I guess, well, no, I guess you could have like a kind of eye-shaped thing, right? Like an oval with pointy ends. Should be a polygon. But yeah, like a triangle, very, basic shape. and then the square, like, and just seeing them together. Oh, that's kind of interesting number of things. Or if you put it in around a circle, 7 points, like, oh, it just feels nice. The geometry, something about it just kind of felt nice. It's a feeling. And then also, yeah, just like the whole idea of mystery and magic, and maybe there's no smoke without fire. Maybe these ancestors of ours knew something that I don't about the nature of seven. And so, it's not too big, not too small. So often when I'm making goals, like almost always actually, I use the number seven. And it's also kind of like a running joke with the universe where I'll just, do things in sevens just because why not? And so that's one thing. That's my favorite number, what I like. What's your favorite number? And have you got a reason? Let me know. I'd be very curious, actually. If you've got, put it in the comments, let me know. Por favor, Marsha Dahali, if you will. And yeah, why it's your favorite number. And I think that again reveals something about your soul, I think, or your experience. And then 4 used to be my favorite number when I was younger. I don't know if that's the influence of my brother because that's his favorite number as well. But like even it was a bit mad, like, OCD kind of thing, tapping things 4 times and then 16 times and then 64 times. And episode 64 is coming up. Interesting. And this kind of stuff. And, you know, or, and for some, and then music, like is in 4s and 16s and six, blocks of like 4/4 is very common for music. So, and it's interesting, numbers in music, subtle changes of number, say from 4/4 to 3/4 to 4/4, as I did in the intro thing, just suddenly changes the emotion, changes the feeling, like the Beatles do it really well in Happiness is a Warm Gun. They changed the rhythm, like in the middle of the song, but it's really smooth. So it's kind of weird, like a little bit disorienting, but not too much, unlike mine, which is, I think, but I'm not surprised there. The Beatles exceeded. But anyway, so, and yeah, so it's interesting. Like if you have a favorite number, why? What is that? What's going on there? And if you don't, why? What's going on there too? Like, I guess it says maybe it's, I don't know how many people would be, which would be more common. But it's interesting. And if I forced you to choose a number, which number would you choose and why? If you choose 10, is that because you like structure? Or if you, choose 11 because you really like structure? No. Maybe, 11, going like, oh, 1, and like the look of it. Ooh, it seems kind of mystical. Maybe you're drawn to that. Or 9, maybe it's like, oh, think about the number 9. It's interesting. So sometimes I just think about numbers and like what is inherent to them. Because in a way, it could be, oh, it's just a number, it just is what it is. But it's very like interesting. There seem to be different characteristics. Like say 1, to start with 1 is yeah, like it's kind of everything. Everything is 1, all is 1. 1 for all and all for one. All for one and one for all. And yet it's the smallest number. Smallest number, and it's also infinity. Infinity is a oneness. So that's interesting. It's kind of this holistic thing, which are kind of like the white light, which contains the rainbow. And then say 2 be like duality, where you have the oneness of life. And then 2 is kind of like yeah, well, there's me and you, or us and them, and God and creation, good and bad, light and dark, happy and sad, time and eternity. These things where you could say, well, there's 2 things. It exists. But also ultimately it's just one. Ultimately they don't exist. It's all just oneness. And then 3, okay, now we're having a party, and the Trinity, Law Elaparig Amorach. It's St. Patrick's Day tomorrow, and St. Patrick, as the story goes, used the shamrock, the 3 leaves, to communicate the idea of the Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, Holy Spirit. But the idea there of like, which is I wasn't really raised in the tradition to really understand. I don't know if I would understand even if I was raised in that tradition, but exactly what that means, Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, but I think kind of like universe is the Father, and then the Son, or the Father could really be embodied by any consciousness much larger than human beings, like the sun or something. Um, uh, and then the Son, meaning the child, or the Father, the Son being like human consciousness, like awakened human consciousness, Christ consciousness, or Krishna consciousness, self-realized consciousness, present moment awareness, free of the mind. Um, and then the Holy Spirit is just the pure energy itself, which could, I don't know, maybe that'd be my rough guess, but I don't know. Let me know in the comments. What does it mean? The Trinity. Help me out here. So three, but then three also, even the shape of it, like this curvy thing, it's kind of like two, but it's kind of spreading a little bit, much like one. One is just a line. So that's interesting. Clearly, there's some symbology baked into it in the script, the script of it. Um, but yeah, three kind of like multiplicity, and then you've got the triangle. And so say if you've got three people in a group, you could have two people and they've got their chemistry. The other, there's three relationships there, and then you've got you know, the cumulative field of those three combined. And so that's kind of, you know, three, I guess, kind of representing the beginning into like a society or something, or like social world. Um, and then four, kind of like a square, but these are just my thoughts of them, right? Like, if you have thoughts about numbers, let me know. But this is just, it's interesting to me anyway. Like, what do numbers symbolize, and what meanings are held by them? So four, like, yeah, it's kind of like structure and order. Like, you've got squares, bricks have four corners, and you build walls and buildings out of bricks. And then four, you also have, music often is in multiples of four. And yeah, uh, I don't have, say, the cultural connotations of, say in certain languages, like I believe apparently in Chinese and Korean, I think, four is the same sound. It's a homonym of death, as the same sound, death and four. And so four is unlucky, apparently. Um, I don't have that connotation, but like just kind of like order and structure for five, getting a little mystical. Like, why we were good at four? What the hell? It's getting. Do we really need that extra corner? What's going on here? Pentagrams and stuff, Um, pentagons. Um, pentagons, a pentagram, no big deal. Nothing funny's going on. Um, six. I don't know. I don't really have anything particular I think about six. I don't know. Maybe it's because it's right next to seven, which I already talked about. Which I find somehow very beautiful and graceful. And even just the look of it. Seven, the angle. Oh, delicious little tight, kind of angle there from the cross stroke of the seven, then going down diagonally. Very nice. Um, eight, again, kind of in the shadow of seven, but or the infinity, kind of connotations of infinity there. But I don't know. Then nine, which is probably finally back to nine, which is kind of pretty interesting. Say, here's a few things about nine, maybe you haven't thought of. So nine is the highest single digit, because you have zero, like 10 is like two digits, right? You got one and then zero representing nothingness, but it's also a circle, which is kind of like one line and one side. So zero, in a way, it's kind of represents nothingness, but it's kind of like infinity too. Like, it's kind of like a circle, like eternity. Anyway, but nine, so it's the highest single digit. Um, it's also a six upside down. Interesting, whatever that means. But say nine, if you go say the nine times table, going up, one times nine is nine, two times nine is 18, three times nine, 27, then 45, then 54, then did I miss one? 27, sorry, 36. Let's go again. A bit rusty. 9, 18, 27, 36, 45, 54, 63, 72, 81, 90. And then 99, 108, keep going up. But what's interesting is that if you look at the numbers there, so they're changing by one. Yeah. So each one is going like, it's 9, like 0, 9. And then the next one is 18. So it's 1 is the first number. And then the next one, 27. Oh, it's 2. Next one, 36, 3. And it just goes up one by one by one. Whereas all the other numbers, I'm pretty sure that pattern would break at some point. It adds up too much, and you go from that first number going from 2, 3, 4. Now it's like 6 or something. But 9, it goes up one by one, right? Because it's almost exactly 10. It's just one short. And by the time it adds up enough, you've got to 10, That's kind of interesting how that works. And okay, so going up one by one up until 9 times 9 is 81, and then 10 times 9, 90. So you're up to 9. And then you're up to 10 with 99. Well, I guess it breaks there, right? But then also the second number in there. So the first one, 9, 0, 9. Okay, begins at 9. Then the next one, 18. Oh, it's gone down 1 to 8. Next one, 27. Oh, it's gone down 1 again to 7. So the second digit in the 9 times table is going 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, right? So it's mirroring, going up by 1 and going down by 1 as it's going up, and then vice versa, going down. And then also, if that wasn't enough, you add them together and it makes 9, right? So like 0 plus 9, 9. 1 plus 8, 9. 2 plus 7, 9. So it all adds up to 9. And then also, I think, my brother's telling me something like that. If you have two numbers, I think, what is it, like multiples of 9, if you add them or if you multiply them, it's this, I can't remember, there's something there. Maybe he'll let me know in the comments. But it's the same again. Like whether you some sort of mystical business. Now here's the thing, like 9's the highest digit. Would it be possible if we had like another digit that we put in there? So if we said, okay, it goes up to, let's say, squish, the number squish. As everyone knows, counting 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, squish, 10. And so squish is this other number. And then 10 is 1, 0. But then you would have 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, squish, teen, 20, 21, etc. 28, 29, 20, squish, 30. Could you just put another number in there and just have this kind of decimal system, but with more options? And if we could do that, then why do we even have 9? Could we do it with one less? And is this just circles? What's actually going on there? Maybe some mathematical genius / someone with rudimentary knowledge could explain. That would be cool. But it's interesting to think about like the structure we use just for something as basic as mathematics, and thinking like, oh, why is it like that? Could we, almost like a name, right? It's just arbitrary. This is your name. Okay, fine. Why? Oh, it just is. We like it. Well, that's what your granddad was called. Oh, okay, fine. Or it means this in our language, and that's how we felt about you, or that's how we wanted you to be. Okay. Or we were celebrating some event that had happened. All right. It just is what it is. It's kind of, we have that with mathematics, it seems, in some way, there, this fundamental thing of choosing to have that many digits. It does seem like that's a choice somehow. Like you could have squish and 40 squish, between 49 and 50, having 40 squish. And then and so isn't that interesting to invent? Just like with a name, you've got a random name, there's who you are, but then you're using that to explore reality and freedom. Then with numbers, to explore the freedom or the nature of reality. To have that freedom to explore, we need certain constraints, and so we're just choosing, this is the nature of numbers. So that's kind of, whoa, man, find that interesting. So yeah, numbers, then other, sacred numerology and sacred geometry, like Randall Carlson. Look up Randall Carlson if you want to learn a bit about sacred geometry. And he has all this really interesting stuff, talking about numbers and how it connects to the units of measurement and their history and the earth and measuring the earth and, a lot of numbers in the way, the hours of the day and just, the way we've done things traditionally, how they're connected to different relationships within the cosmos and patterns. And it would kind of be seemingly a secret code that certain secret societies would use. And also, people would imprint into temples and stuff. And so it seems like, much like music, which I guess is a sort of embodied emotional mathematics, the numbers really are like this very primal language, with which we can try to name and understand the ineffable reality. So, and that you have things like how, what's it, geometria? What's it called? The thing where, say, in the ancient Hebrew alphabet, was it Aramaic as well, or just Hebrew? I don't know. But they didn't have numbers. Their numbers were letters. So A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, they would represent 1 to 10 respectively, or something like this. And so your name, someone's name, or the name for God, or the name for this, or whatever, you could have the letters, and you can add them up, and you would get a certain number, and then that number has a certain meaning. And so they would make the words, whatever the concept was describing, they would seemingly create words which numerically were consistent with their ideas of what numbers meant and what those numbers were representing already. And then all this kind of crazy, mad stuff would happen where it seems like, you could put words together and the numbers would interact, or the number for, this concept. If you look at the add up the letters and what numbers they represent, and you add up some other word and the numbers, they've got the same number. And so those concepts are linked in some way, which sounds like, oh, that's ridiculous. That's total coincidence. But I've seen certain examples where it's like really interesting. Wow, that does seem to be connected. And it kind of makes you wonder, like, with, I think life is someone said, life is not only more bizarre than we imagine, it's more bizarre than we can imagine. And I think this is probably one subject where that's probably going on pretty strong. So, anything else about names and numbers I would like to share and consider? Not really. I think that's pretty good. So, like playing a little bit more music. So let's go with 2 bits of music today. Shout out to the number 2, and shout out to all our number friends. That's another thing. Do you think numbers have spirits? Is there a spirit? Is there a consciousness to numbers? They like these gods, like, I am 7, welcome to my paradise. I don't know. Let me know in the comments. Do you think numbers are transdimensional and or extraterrestrial entities? And if so, what does that mean for me personally? Is it good or bad? Numbers, you got a name. Numbers come out to play. Mathematics and grammar, vocabulary, come to me. What I'm trying to sleep amid geometry, planets in motion, mathematical ocean. Let it flow like the tides of numbers and ink. Letters for you, telling you what they think. And what does it mean? And what does it seem to mean? The numbers, my friend, oh, let her be what it is, yeah. All right. So that's episode 47. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the numbers and names of your choosing, or which choose you, as the case may be. So on. See you next week.